Is it cold out here? You bet. But since I'm stuck inside, we're going to do the timing belt on this Audi A4. Now this car has sat for about 3 years, and I've pretty much deadlined it because I need to do the timing belt, and I'm a stickler for doing it on time. So we parked it. It's been sitting since I've gotten time, and I have a little bit of time now. We got nasty weather outside. It's cold as the dickens, so I'm going to work on the timing belt. I'm going to do a brake job. I'm going to put it all on video for you. And this car was definitely my son's pride and joy, so I love to take care of it for him. First step, we're going to disconnect the battery. The battery's disconnected, and I've got the lift set up to lift it up. This is not at all necessary to do any of this work. But since I have it, why not use it? There, right there. And an unknown fact, there's actually an arrow right underneath this rocker panel where you're supposed to lift these up, even if you're using a floor jack. And this is just going to make this next step easier. I'm up here by the front wheel, and I need to remove the guard here that connects to the bumper. You're going to need a T25 Torx. Once we get those 2 screws out, that'll give us access to remove these 2 screws here to remove the bumper. In my case, the one up above is already missing. Apologies for the heater noise this morning. It was only 6 degrees Fahrenheit when I came out to work. I'm going to pull the front wheels off of here to make it a lot easier for access. I've went ahead and removed all 4 tires. We're going to be doing a brake job anyway. And I've moved them to their respective place so they're already rotated. That's also going to give me more access to get to the back of this panel so I can get to the back of the bumper. I'm going to be using this trim removal tool to get this push pin out. There. That's going to give us a lot better access to get to the back of the bumper bolts where we need to remove them. We'll save that for later. And I'm going to keep it on the corresponding side. It may also help to remove these additional screws. If your dust guard underneath is still bolted up in the back, it may help to take those bolts out as well. It's hard to see in there, folks, but there's a nut right there and one right there behind those wires. We need to remove those so we can take the bumper off. The 2 over here on the passenger side are a little bit easier to see. I'll be using a 10mm deep socket with an extension to get the job done. And I love the foresight that the engineers had to leave you room for an extension to work here. All right. The driver's side is going to be a little trickier because of the wires and the windshield washer reservoir. Almost fit my hand in there, but not quite. It fell in the bottom. I'll get it later. Let's get the top one out. All right, got that one too. We'll be using a T30 Torx to take out the bolts here, here, and here. Those removed, the bumper should pull out just like so. With the bumper down, now's the time to remove the wire clips. So these are not too terrible to get apart. What you do is you push them together, like so, and you want to release this pin right here. I know I say you don't need a tool, but it does help. There you go. And what you're doing is pushing this down right here, and when you push that down, that releases this little clip in here on the top side. Sometimes if you're wearing gloves, it helps to have a screwdriver or something to push down on this. It can really hurt your dexterity. So push together, push down. There we go. I think I got everything loose. One more. Headlights. Alright. There we go. That should come off of there, just like so. And if you're full of windshield washer fluid, like my car was, helps to plug this off. I honestly wasn't expecting the windshield washer fluid to go through there. With the bumper off, it should look a little something like this. Next, we need to remove these flows for the intercooler, and they should just snap off of there. So it'll be good to do anyway. I got lots of bugs and junk in here because we live out in the country, so there you go. And you can see how those are clipped, and you got to pull them out to the side. Gonna need to unplug the horn over here on the passenger side. I think this fitting's broke. Yeah, it is. Well, we'll just do this the hard way. That's a 10mm. Just like most everything else on this car. We'll just put that back on there and set it aside. And same with this side. I might be able to unplug this one. Let's see. Yeah, I got that one. Take our intercooler air director out of here as well. There we go. All right. With all that apart, you can see back there, there's some 13mm bolt right there. And right there, as well as right there. We're going to take those out next. There's 3 on each side. Up above where those others were, there's also a 10mm, just a nut. I'm going to use a deep socket to take that one out. And of course, there's also one on the other side. With those removed, they should come right off. Before we go any further, I like to disconnect everything up top. And to start, I'm going to take off this overflow to the radiator. So our main goal here is to get this into the service position. Basically, that'll tilt out the radiator core supports so we can have access to the timing belt. We got the overflow disconnected. Now I'm going to disconnect this wiring harness that goes up here to the grill. Make sure you pull them out of the bracket down here below. It's very tempting to drain the radiator. I might need to flush it anyway. We're going to have water come out of here when we replace the water pump, which is something you should do when you do the timing belt. But you will notice there is enough slack in this upper radiator hose to allow this front end to swivel forward. I'm going to remove the engine cover just to get it out of the way. I'm going to remove the weather strip around the hood closure. I don't have to take it all the way off. I just have to get it to a point that it's out of the way. And I want to make sure it doesn't fall into where I'm working later. We need to remove this intake, so I'm going to take out these two Phillips head screws right here and here. And all this junk just came out of there. So you better believe I'm going to blow everything off before I open the engine up. Right there's a clamp going to the hose for the intercooler. We're going to need to get that loose and get that hose pulled off. And that's going to be a 7mm socket. For the next step, we're going to need that T25 back. You're going to see a bolt here on this side, and there's one on the other side just like it, under the headlight. Going to need to take these two out right here. And these two on the other side. Now I got better access to remove this intercooler hose that I loosened just a few minutes ago. All right. Before we put it into service position, it also helps to loosen this clamp holding these lines. In my case, I got a little extra access just by removing this clip going to the hood release. The engine's now in the service position. Using a 17mm wrench, you can release the drive belt. Next, we're going to remove the tensioner. I'm going to need a 13mm for this. And if your tensioner's weak, now's a good time to replace it. I always give the bearings a spin and listen for abnormal sounds. I think this one will be okay. Before we remove the timing belt cover, I need to get this hose off of here. You can definitely expect some coolant to come out of this hose. Sorry, folks. You guessed it, we're back to the T25. I'm going to go ahead and take this timing belt cover off. I've got these plugged up because if you don't plug them up, they'll leak for quite some time. And that'll take the top half of it off. I'm definitely going to clean that up in the part washer. To remove the lower half of the timing cover, I'm going to have to pull this pulley off. And I'll be using a 6mm hex to pull the bolts out. And they're pretty short little bolts. And that's the last one. There should be 6 of these total. There's the pulley. It'll come right off. We're going to need that T25 again. And there's a bolt there. One down in the bottom on that corner, one in that corner, and one back here that's kind of hidden. There's 2 more bolts down there. They're the T25s. I'm going to pull those out, and the timing chain cover should come off there. There's 2 more T30 bolts right here and right here. And that should be the rest of them to get that timing chain cover off of there. With all those removed, bottom half of the timing chain cover should come right out of there. With that out of the way, we have access to everything we need to work on it. You can definitely see on this belt that there's a lot of cracking, it's getting old, and it's time to do this replacement. The recommended service interval, I believe, is 100,000 miles, but I'm doing this one at 80,000. So you can see I've got this top pulley for the cam set at the top center. And down there, there's already a mark from somebody who'd done a timing belt service previously. I'm going to go ahead and remark that gear and make sure that it's good and visible because I do not want any of these to move. With everything clearly marked, we're ready to remove the belt tensioner. For this, I'm going to be using an 8mm hex and a 13mm socket. We're going to hold with the hex up here and remove the nut on the tensioner. I'm going to leave it on there loosely until I can get this loose. And now we should be able to remove the tension on the tensioner, like so. You want to use the utmost care not to move anything in this engine. You definitely don't want to move the cam. The rest of this is not going to matter as much, but don't move the cam. Tensioner will have a lock washer and a nut. You want to not lose those. You don't want anything to end up inside of that timing belt. Okay. Next, you can remove the tensioner. It just fits on this stud right here. And this kind of dog ears into what looks like a frost plug right there. I'm going to unbox my timing belt kit here. This is a Continental timing belt kit. It's been several years since I ordered this. Okay. There's our new timing belt. Comes with a tag that we can put on the engine cover so that we can document when we did the timing belt. A new roller, top and bottom, and a new belt and tensioner. It's got some instructions right here. Probably should have looked at these before I started, but there we go. Well, I have the two belts out of the car. I like to double check and make sure that they are exactly the same. And kind of looking that way. A lot of people will count the teeth. I'm not going to go that far. I've been told these are directional. This is the one that came off the car, and this is the way that it was seated. I'm not too sure if that's a thing, but I'm going to go ahead and put the new one on in the same manner with the numbers facing just like this. Using our 13mm, we're going to take off this idler. And I've already broke it loose. I like to compare the old one with the new one, and everything looks like it should be the same dimensions. We're also going to be reusing the bolt that just came out of there, and that's going to torque to 25 Newton meters. And 25 Newton meters looks pretty close to about 17 foot-pounds. I'm just working my way down from the top, so next I'm going to pull the water pump. And if you're going to pull your water pump, and you really should when you do a timing belt, make sure you got a pan under there, because we're going to lose quite a bit of water. I want to make sure it's good and clean up here so I don't get any debris inside the water jacket. You guessed it, we got 10mm for these, and there's 3 of them, one there, and one on the bottom. I'm going to start on the bottom first because it's the hardest one to get to. There's one. There's 2. And there's 3, but there's no Tootsie Pop in there. There we go. I'll be replacing this water pump with this HPEU water pump, and it has the metal impeller on it. The plastic ones have been prone to failure. And again, you want to compare the parts to make sure they're going to be the correct fit. Everything looks okay. You're going to want to double check, make sure you have an O-ring on here and that it's clean. Make sure everything's good and clean up here. Don't want any issues with it sealing. Want to make sure that the surface where the O-ring seals is clean as well. I'm actually going to use just a little bit of that water on that O-ring to lubricate it with. And we want to orient the water pump in the same position as it came out. These bolts are only going to torque to about 15 Newton meters, which is close to about 10 foot-pounds. Now that I got those drawn up evenly, let's torque them. Since we're working our way down, I'll be taking off this lower roller. Here's the lower roller we just removed, and here's the new one. And the new one came with a new bolt, so we're going to definitely use it. New one's going to torque to about 35 Newton meters, which looks to be about 25 or 26 foot-pounds. Next, we're going to install the tensioner, and this dog ear here fits in this circle here. Looks like a frost plug on an engine. Like so. I'm going to just loosely put this nut on here. We'll come back to that later. Now this is a part many of you came for, and I'm just double checking to make sure I haven't moved anything, and my marks all look good. They're right where they were. And this is going to be one of the most critical steps, where most care is going to be necessary. Now I'm going to put these letters facing us, which is kind of the orientation of how the other one came off. I've got to take a lot of care not to move this cam or the crank. It's going to be critical. Now we've got everything lined up. I've got this mark lined up here. I've got the slack out of the belt. I've got the belt on, all the gear cogs. I've looked down here, looked on the water pump. Everything's good to go. I've even took the trouble to line up this mark on the belt right there. So let's tighten up the tensioner and see where we're at. We're going to need our hex wrench again, and we're going to need a torque wrench. The instructions say to turn the tensioner until the notch is above the tab. Guessing somewhere like that. I think that's what they're talking about. That notch there and the tab right there. Let's see where we're at. Okay. There's the notch. I'm guessing with that green on it. And right there. That looks pretty close. I don't know if you folks can see that. I think that's where we need to be. And that still looks good and lined up. And we still look good and lined up down below. Thinking that that is where it's supposed to be. Yep, that's what we got. Now that I got those lined up, I'm going to torque this down to 25 Newton meters or around 19 foot-pounds. To do that, we'll need to hold the top with a hex and torque the bottom bolt nut with our torque wrench. Now that we've got that tightened up, I'm going to rotate the engine clockwise from the position I'm standing, make sure everything still lines up after 2 full turns. Okay, that's 2 times around, and it definitely lines up right there, and down below. I think we're done. And no, your belt's not going to end up in the same place every time. It's got a weird number of teeth, different gears, so it takes about 2 revolutions to make sure everything's still lined up. And one very important and often overlooked step is I'm going to put this label on here that tells me when the service was done on this timing belt. Today is January 15th, 24. And I know for you Europeans it should be 15/01/24. And this is at exactly 180,000 miles. And we want to do the next one at 260,000 miles. And we did the water pump, the tensioners, and the pulleys. So there you have it. There's a complete timing belt and water pump install for an Audi A4. And I'm going to be doing the cam follower, oil changes, a full brake job. We're going to get this thing all tuned up. And a full reassembly on what we just took apart. So tune back in. And we are by no means giving up on the D4. This one's just been sitting for a few years till I had the nerve to work on it. I do want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. If you can't get enough LAOL content, consider a channel membership down below. And we've had the heater on in here for a couple of hours, and we're finally above freezing here, about 35. So I'm comfortable enough to work out here. So apologies for the noise from the heater in the background. We'll be using a T30 text. It may be still bolted up. It may help to still bolted up in the back. It may help to take those bolts out as well. I'm going to go ahead and take the timing chain cover off, timing belt cover off. And it just fits on that slud. Ugh. Slud. What the heck? Next you can remove the temp. Now let's tighten up the temperature. So let's tighten up our temp. Oops. Well, that's another way to do it.